1995, San Jerónimo de las Lomas. A mother places a bouquet of white flowers at the entrance of the old school, a habit she has maintained for 17 years. Her daughter was presumed dead in a flood, along with 17 other students. But this year, an old notebook is found, and the truth begins to surface. There had been no flood, no accident. Only a new location came to light. The children disappeared. They were taken. And together, the people who had suffered the pain of losing their loved ones would no longer remain silent. The dawn sky over San Jerónimo de las Lomas was gray and silent. Along the road leading to the eastern part of the town, where the Santa Oliva boarding school once stood, everything was now covered in the dust of time. An old bicycle rounded the corner, its tires crunching on the gravel road. The woman pedaled slowly and stopped near the school gate. She took the bouquet of white daisies tied to her front basket, dismounted, adjusted her worn sweater, and walked towards the silent iron gate. There was no one around, but the entire town remembered that day and would immediately recognize her. Nora Santiago, the mother who hadn't given up for almost 2 decades, despite the entire town's silence. She placed the bouquet on the ground in front of the gate, gently smoothed the crumpled white ribbon, and stood in silence for a long time. Her eyes were dry and deep, as if there were no more tears left to shed. Nora did not pray, did not say a word. She just stood there as she did every year. That day, the day her daughter, Adela Santiago, had disappeared with 17 other children. Every year people watched her arrive, place flowers, turn her back, and leave in silence. Even though the school had been closed for many years, even though the government had announced that nothing unusual had been found, even though the press had stopped mentioning the case after a few months of uproar, even though no one in town wanted to touch the subject again, only she continued to bear a pain that did not diminish. As Nora pedaled away from the gate, a young man was watching her from inside the school grounds. He wore a backward baseball cap, dusty clothes, and carried a bag of power tools. His name was Jose Elizondo, an electrician hired to dismantle the remaining old lighting system before the school was auctioned off. Jose didn't live there, but he had heard about the Santa Oliva case since he was a child. A story whispered among adults and quickly glossed over in conversations. However, that morning, what made Jose stop was that woman. Inside the principal's office where Jose was working, everything remained intact since the school was abandoned. The ceiling was water-stained and the filing cabinet tilted, the wooden desk rotted, and a ceiling fan with broken blades lay on the floor. While removing the set of built-in sockets in the desk, Jose discovered a drawer underneath that was jammed. He tried to pull it, but it wouldn't budge. Using the tip of a screwdriver as a lever, he pried it open, and as soon as the drawer gave way, something fell to the floor. An old brown, leather-bound notebook, its clasp loose from termites, and mold covering nearly the entire cover. There was no title, no name. Jose thought about tossing it aside, but upon seeing the handwriting inside, he sat down, turned on his flashlight, and opened it. The first page was a table of student groups written in black ink, slanted but still legible. Ecology field trip, 2 days. El Manto Verde Forest departure date 07/03/1977. Group 1. Helena Vasquez, Jimena Lopez, responsible teacher. Malena, departure 09:15 a.m. Heading to checkpoint no. 1. Group 2. Adela Santiago, Cecilia Cortez, Teresa Hidalgo, Adriana Ramos, responsible teacher. Vega, departure 09:35 a.m. Checkpoint number 3. Total 5 groups. Each group 3 to 4 students departing at intervals of approximately 15 to 20 minutes. No group went together. Jose stopped when he read the name Adela Santiago. His hand instinctively closed the notebook, feeling an inexplicable agitation. That name. He had just heard it that morning. Or rather, he had seen the person who carried that name in the eyes of the old mother. He opened the notebook a few more pages. The more he read, the more he felt it wasn't an ordinary notebook. It was the original plan, unedited, uncensored. And most chillingly, it completely contradicted the accident reports the media had disseminated over the past 17 years. Jose remained silent for a while, the notebook on his lap. He had no reason to get involved, but something prevented him from ignoring it. It was Doña Nora's gaze, perhaps the way she placed the bouquet as if still fulfilling a promise. Jose stood up, slipped the notebook into his jacket pocket. Leaving the room, he locked the door, cut the main electrical circuit, and headed straight for the western outskirts, where his uncle lived alone in an old wooden house with a typewriter and hundreds of rejected newspapers. Elias Ramirez, the only person Jose knew who had tried to delve deeper into the Santa Oliva disappearance case. The man who had been barred from his profession, and also the man who had uttered a phrase Jose never forgot. When silence stretches on for too long, it becomes a lie itself. Minutes later, he was in the room where Elias Ramirez lived, which actually looked more like an archive than a residence. Papers, maps, newspaper archives piled from floor to ceiling. Cardboard boxes with words scrawled in black pen. 1977, Santa Oliva. Blocked archives. Unconfirmed witness testimonies. The old Remington typewriter was in a corner of the desk, still with coffee stains from who knew how many years ago, and beside it, a faded leather-bound notebook, its spine nearly loose, where it was written in red ink, 1977, Santa Oliva, rejected draft. When Jose placed the old notebook on the table and said, "Uncle, I found this here. Can you take a look?" Elias asked nothing, only looked up at his nephew for a second, then picked up his glasses and put them on, turning the pages slowly. Under the yellowish light of the desk lamp, his eyes stopped when he saw the name, Adela Santiago. He let out a slight sigh, as if to calm himself. His hands trembled, but his eyes remained fixed, not missing a single line. He turned the cover, checked the handwriting, the style of the notes, the use of words. Then he opened the desk drawer, took out a pile of documents tied with a frayed string. Official Santa Oliva News, July 1977. Both sat in the silent room. The only sounds remaining were the ticking of the clock and the turning of pages. Jose remained silent, but his eyes did not stray from his uncle for more than 3 seconds. Elias looked up slowly, reading each excerpt aloud, as if confronting a court official report. On the morning of July 30, 1977, the group of students from the Santa Oliva boarding school, composed of 18 female students, was surprised by a sudden heavy downpour while crossing the Roca Seca stream in the El Manto Verde forest area. According to the record, the entire group moved together and disappeared simultaneously due to a flash flood and landslide. He stopped. He turned the notebook Jose had brought. He used a pencil to gently cross out each line. Group 1, Helena Vasquez, 09:15 a.m., checkpoint number 1, Group 2. Adela Santiago, 09:35 a.m., checkpoint number 3, Group 3. Cecilia Cortez, 09:50 a.m., checkpoint no. 2. Elias looked up, his voice hoarse but firm. They did not go together. They could not have been swept away by the water at the same time. Jose said softly, "Does this mean everything they've said for the past 17 years was a fabrication?" Elias gave an ironic smile, not sarcastic, but bitter. "It's a script," He pulled Jose closer, pointing to the hand-drawn diagram in the notebook, drawn in purple ink with ink smudges from having gotten wet. Look right here. Adela's group was assigned to go to checkpoint number 3. This route leads southwest, circling the old ranch. Another group circled the hill to the east. All were dispersed. If that's the case, Jose stammered, the mass accident is impossible. Elias nodded slightly. Impossible from a logical standpoint. One group left at 09:15 a.m., the other at 09:50 a.m. There's no way they could have appeared at the same point in the stream and been swept away simultaneously. Jose remained silent, but his face clearly lost color. Elias stood up and took out an old topographical map from 1977, a photocopy he had kept since his days as a journalist. He spread the map on the table and marked each point corresponding to the checkpoints noted in the notebook. By connecting them with a pencil, 5 different routes emerged, dividing the El Monte forest into smaller areas. And this, Elias lowered his voice, was never disclosed. Jose quietly asked, if this is the true plan, why did they hide it? Why did no one say anything? Elias didn't answer immediately. He silently picked up another folder, quickly turning to the page titled Parents' Reaction, 1977. After the disappearance, each parent was called in individually. It was exhaustively explained to them that it was a natural disaster. Some families left town. Some accepted assistance and remained silent. Only Adela's mother remained. He turned to Jose, his eyes fixed. She didn't keep silent, but no one listened to her. I wrote articles, but the editors struck them out. I was forced out, and since then, everything just sank. At that moment, Jose saw his uncle's eyes turn slightly red. Elias was a man who lived by words. But when he was forced to bury what he believed to be the truth, all he had left was silence and hundreds of boxes of files. If you hadn't brought this notebook today, Elias continued, perhaps the rest of my life would have ended in doubt. He pointed to another page. Look, this column records the predicted return time. Each group had to return separately at a specific time. So the question is, what happened between the departure time and the return time? Jose suddenly clenched his hands. They weren't lost, they were taken. Elias nodded. His voice was now clear and strong. If this is the real plan, then someone knew exactly where each group was going, at what time, and why they needed to be separated. And that person wasn't just at the school. Both men exchanged glances. The room suddenly felt stifling. Not because of the cold, but because both understood if this story was true. It was no longer a mass accident. It was an intentional, well-orchestrated plan, possibly supported by people who wanted to bury it forever. Outside the window, the whistle of a night train sounded in the distance, fading into the darkness. Elias closed the notebook, placed it on the table, and took an old cassette tape from the drawer. Tomorrow we'll go to the location marked checkpoint number 3. If Adela was assigned there, then perhaps somehow there are still traces. Jose nodded without hesitation. He knew that from the moment he opened that drawer, he had stepped into a story from which he couldn't turn back. The morning passed in the characteristic silence of the mountainous region. The town of San Jerónimo slowly woke, the red-tiled roofs still dewy. In the distance, Elias Ramirez pedaled his old bicycle, heading towards the end of the bumpy dirt road. The canvas bag slung over his shoulder was heavy with a single item, the old notebook bearing Adela Santiago's name. The house he was looking for was small and simple, with a faded zinc roof, and on the porch a wooden plaque with faded, hand-painted black letters No visitors. Elias stopped his bicycle, sighed slightly, and then approached, knocking 3 times on the wooden door frame. There was no response. He waited a bit, then knocked again, this time saying clearly, "I need to talk about Adela Santiago." Inside, he heard the sound of a chair moving. The door opened a crack. A woman with graying hair, deep eyes, her face devoid of makeup or jewelry. Nora Santiago showed no surprise upon seeing Elias. She just looked at him for a few seconds, then opened the door completely. "Come in." Elias nodded slightly without replying. The house inside was so meticulously organized, it felt cold. There were no decorative objects, no family photos. Everything seemed to have been tidied away, so no one would need to remember anything. Only the old wooden table in the center, a kettle not yet boiled, and worn, invisible footpaths on the cement floor, stretching from the entrance door to a single chair opposite. Elias put down his bag and slowly took out the brown leather notebook. He pushed it towards her, opened to the exact page that recorded the second group. "This is the internal group plan for the 1977 ecology field trip. It doesn't resemble any of the published reports. Your daughter's name is here." Nora didn't touch the notebook immediately. She just looked as if verifying something that couldn't be expressed in words. A moment later, her hand lifted and turned the page. And then, her eyes stopped. The black ink was still intact. Group 2, Adela Santiago, Cecilia Cortez, Teresa Hidalgo, Adriana Ramos, responsible teacher Vega, departure or 9:35 a.m., checkpoint number 3. She looked up. Her voice was not emotional, but like something that had accumulated after years of doubt. I knew she didn't go with a large group. Elias remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "That morning, the girl told me she was excited to go in a small separate group. She even told me she would have to bring an extra map because their route was a circular path through the dry forest. She said clearly, 'Checkpoint number 3. I remember because she folded the map and put it in her coat pocket, tracing the path again. Her voice dropped almost a whisper. "But then, the press said they crossed the stream together, that the water swept them all away. The police said it, the school said it. Everyone told me I heard wrong, that I was mistaken. But I knew." She said it, from her own mouth. She pushed the notebook back gently but firmly. "Thank you for bringing this. But if you intend to just stir things up and abandon it like the others, then you should leave now." Elias didn't blink. He answered immediately. "I don't intend to abandon it. Never. I will retrace the same route Adela's group took that day. And I need someone who knows the terrain well. I can't do this alone." Nora looked at him as if searching for any trace of falsehood. But then she turned her face, poured a cup of hot water, handed it to him, and sat down. "I know that road." Elias was surprised. "You mean, I've walked it for 17 years. Every year. On July 3rd, I reached the exact end point the girl mentioned. I left flowers there and came back. No one knew. No one needed to know." The house fell silent. Elias said softly but firmly, "Tomorrow we go together again." Nora nodded. "Just one thing." Elias tilted his head. "If we go all the way. No turning back halfway. Are you sure you can handle it?" Elias looked at her, a faint smile on his face, marked by the times justice had sidelined him. "If I couldn't handle it, I would have given up almost 20 years ago." When Elias left that house, the sun was already beginning to shine softly. He turned and saw Nora standing at the window, her shadow stretching over the old cement floor. The sun had not yet fully reached the town center, and the mist still covered the lower areas of the forest. But Nora and Elias were already on their way. Without a car, without an electronic compass, just an old map Elias had photocopied from the 1977 documents, a brown leather notebook, and the memory of the woman who had repeated this journey for 17 years. They left the town by a trail to the north, skirted a wild bamboo grove, and then followed the edge of a rocky hill. Nora led the way with steady steps, neither fast nor slow, as if she knew exactly every blade of grass, every thorny bush that would block the way. Elias followed closely, occasionally comparing the map and the notes in the notebook, and the further he went, the more surprised he was by the absolute precision of everything. "This road," he said softly, "disappeared from all current maps. But it's still here." Nora didn't turn her head, just replied softly, "Because no one looked for it." After nearly 3 hours walking through the sparse forest, they passed a large earth mound, likely a small landslide, but with no streams, no dangerous rocks, just soft earth and some worn tracks. This was the spot that had been considered the flood scene. But clearly nothing there could be fatal if the group of students simply passed through. Elias sat down to examine the soil, turned over a layer of young moss, and sighed in silence. No traces of major floods, no rock slides, no recent alluvial deposits. Everything is wrong. Very wrong. They continued for another 200 meters until Nora signaled with her hand for them to stop. Ahead, there was a flat piece of ground surrounded by trees, forming a rare clearing in the forest. There was no path to follow, no visible traces of house foundations. But Nora pointed directly to a depression in the grass. Back then, there was a small wooden house with a red-tiled roof here. It vanished just a few weeks after the disappearance. Elias approached using a stick to lightly scrape the soil surface. Beneath the grass and moss, there were some pieces of broken brick, dark as if they had been burned. He knelt carefully, feeling along the edge of the foundation. His fingers touched something harder than earth. A square concrete structure with part of a misaligned rusted iron cover exposed. "Is this—" "It's a basement cover," Nora replied dryly, "where I used to see people going in and out." And then it suddenly fell silent forever. The two didn't rush to open it. Instead, Elias took out a small film camera, the kind used by old reporters. He stepped back a few paces, taking photos from various angles: the depression in the grass, the concrete foundation, the pieces of burned brick, the entire wooded area around it. Then he took a piece of red marking tape, tied it to a nearby tree, and drew the position on the photocopied map. If Adela and her group came this far, then they clearly didn't die in a landslide or by drowning. He paused, his eyes fixed on the basement cover. Then he turned to Nora. "So, who was waiting for them here? Who lived in this unknown place? Who could make the house disappear in a few weeks without anyone asking questions?" Nora lightly clasped her hands. "Some people in town know. But they keep silent. Not because they don't care, but because they know very well what to fear." Elias picked up the camera again, taking a few more close-up shots. He didn't say it aloud, but his mind was reconstructing a scene: the wooden house in the middle of the forest, the student group arriving on schedule, encountering no natural disaster, but people. Someone with enough power and cruelty to cover up the entire incident. And if there was a basement, it wasn't just a shelter, it was a place to hold people. Before leaving the area, Elias wrote in the notebook, "Rancho del Silencio suspected. Group 2, Adela reception point. Both started back along the same path. No one spoke much. But the atmosphere had changed. For the first time in 17 years, they were no longer looking at the loss from a distance. They had touched what might be the final point of 18 young lives, a place that had never been publicly mentioned. And this time, they weren't going to stop. On the way back, while resting under a large tree, Elias opened the old canvas bag he carried on his shoulder, rummaging through his pile of worn personal files. He pulled out a piece of paper folded into quarters, its edges yellowed with age. He said, "Back then, when the draft of my first article was rejected, I was still restless. I used to go to the old El Heraldo newsroom at night, rummaging through the files of readers who had responded or sent information about the Santa Oliva case." Nora looked at him, frowning slightly. "So, what did you find?" Elias held out the piece of paper. The handwriting in blue ink, crooked but still legible. Fernando Bravo, alley number 6 at the edge of El Risco grass. He was the head of the provincial criminal police back then. I never met him, but I saw his name on an anonymous reader's letter, telling me to look for him if I wanted to know why the investigation was halted halfway. Nora nodded slightly, her voice soft. If he's still alive, maybe he hasn't forgotten either. Half an hour later, Elias was in front of a small, low-roofed house provisionally built with unfinished bricks. Elias knocked on the door twice and then said loudly, "I'm looking for Mr. Bravo. I'm Elias Ramirez, a journalist. I want to know about the Santa Oliva case. I know you worked on that file." Inside, there was no response. A minute later, the door opened a crack just enough to reveal part of a face. The face of an elderly man, with deep, dark circles under his eyes, a long beard still tightly holding an old shotgun. Fernando Bravo, former neighborhood police investigator who years ago was one of the first to arrive at the El Monte forest site. "Who told you I'm still alive?" "No one. I just presumed." Fernando looked at Elias for another 3 seconds and then opened the door. "Come in, but no filming, no recording. If I see any recorder, you must leave immediately." The room had nothing but a dining table, a crooked map on the wall, and a gray safe on the floor. Fernando pulled the map down and spread it on the table. It was the original topographical map from 1977, with the complete diagram of the El Monte Verde forest, the root streams, prohibited exploration areas. And in the lower left corner, a black ink mark that someone had tried to scratch out, but it was still legible, Rancho del Silencio. Local code 3BSR17, removed from administrative map since March 1978. Fernando tapped his hand, exactly on that spot. "You asked about checkpoint number 3, right? This location is exactly where it was. The route description in the internal notebook matches perfectly. But when I proposed someone go check it, my superior said, no need to look there. There's nothing in the danger area." Elias looked at the map, his heart beating faster. At the time, I didn't understand why. But a week later, I was transferred to the warehouse, and 3 months later, I lost my job. Everyone said I was causing panic on my own. But the truth is, I got close to the ranch. I smelled burning. Someone was there before. And then it disappeared as if it had never existed. Fernando went inside, picked up a pile of old files with yellowed papers, and pulled out a folded delivery order. In June 1977, someone ordered 60 industrial meals from the Central City Depot. Delivery location, Rancho del Silencio. Applicant's name, Zúñiga. Registered title, Representative of International Scholarship Organization. Elias lightly clenched his hands. Zúñiga was the supervisor of Santa Oliva that year. After the incident, she disappeared from town. Fernando nodded. She was the only one who had access to international student records and the student exchange program, a feeding scheme in a prohibited area, and ordered a month before the disappearance. It was no coincidence at all. Elias quickly wrote down the details in the notebook. Ranch, checkpoint number 3, Adela, field trip form, Zúñiga delivery order, separate route. Everything began to connect, no longer fragmented, no longer a suspicion. At that very moment, the wooden door opened. José Elizondo stepped in, sweating profusely, still holding his bag. His face was abnormally tense. Uncle Elias, I think I'm being followed. Elias turned immediately. What? José breathed with difficulty. Last night, someone parked their car not far from my house. No lights, no rear license plate. I grabbed my car keys and went inside, but then I came back out. The car's brake line was cut. The main brake cable was precisely removed. No traces of mud, no shoe marks. Clearly, a professional did it. Fernando listened, remained silent for a few seconds. So, they know you're looking? Elias looked at José, then at Fernando. I won't stop, but we need clearer evidence. Fernando nodded. He opened the safe and took out another brown leather notebook. Not the same one José had found, but a backup copy of the internal police files from 1977. He handed it to Elias. Here is my initial report before I was asked to withdraw it. There are signs that Santa Oliva received external funding, but it wasn't disclosed in the school's budget report. Elias clutched the notebook. José stood beside him, watching the two men. One who had been dismissed, another who had had his articles rejected, and himself. An electrician who now became the most important witness. All of them understood from now on, anyone involved in this would no longer be completely safe. But Elias only said one sentence, silent as the wind in the old forest. We have heard many warnings. Now it's others' turn to hear the truth. When Elias returned home, an old brown paper package lay on the red brick doorstep. No sender's name, no postmark. Elias thought for a moment, then unlocked the door, turned on the living room lights, and placed the package on the table. He put on thin gloves, carefully opening each fold. Inside were two things: an original newspaper from 1977, the same article by Elias that the editor-in-chief had refused to print years ago. The part of the text that directly mentioned the contradiction in the report of missing student grouping was underlined in red with a marker. And the second thing was a lead bullet, heavy and cold, solitary on the paper. On the back of the newspaper there was scribbled handwriting, but each stroke seemed etched directly into the reader's eyes. If you publish this again, you won't get another chance to write anything. Elias stood in silence before the table for a while. He wasn't surprised. That threatening hand had returned, no longer hidden in the shadows of the organization, but emerging directly at his doorstep. He grabbed some tape, wrapped the bullet, and taped it together with the original newspaper. He wrote clearly, Evidence 070794, sent to Nora José Fernando. And he knew it was time to prepare, very carefully. At the same time, on the other side of town, at Nora Santiago's house. When she returned from the supermarket, the back door was open. There were no signs of forced entry, just a window slightly ajar exactly at a person's height. The objects in the house were still intact. Money, jewelry, even the safe no one had touched. But one thing had disappeared. Adela's letter, laminated, kept in a wooden frame under the small altar in the corner of the house. The letter written in purple ink with childish handwriting. Mom, tomorrow I'm going to checkpoint number 3. I'll bring the notebook I wrote in. I'll come back to tell you everything." This letter Nora had kept for 17 years. No one but her knew where it was hidden. It held no value to anyone but the mother who had lost her daughter. Nora understood immediately this was not theft. It was a warning. She called Elias that very night. When he heard the details of the letter, he asked nothing more, just said, "Tomorrow I'll come." The next morning, Elias didn't just come with words of comfort. He brought 3 complete sets of photocopied files. Each set included photos of the concrete foundation at the Ranch 1977 map with the scratched-out Ranch del Silencio mark, the group plan in the old notebook, documents of food order in Zúñiga's name, the original article Elias wrote years ago, images of the bullet and the threat. He gave 1 set to Nora, 1 to Jose, 1 to Fernando, keeping nothing for himself. "If I am silenced, at least 3 people will keep the flame burning. And if you and I are also no longer here, then let someone find these papers, even if it's 30 years from now." Fernando nodded, asking nothing. Jose remained silent, but Elias saw the young man's hand grip the file cover. Late that night, as Elias had just closed the door preparing to turn off the lights, 3 soft knocks sounded at the gate. The knocks marked a turning point for the entire investigation. He gripped the doorknob, looking through the curtain crack. A girl of about 20, thin, wearing glasses with slightly curly hair, stood in the light, coming from inside the house. "Elias Ramirez," her voice was calm without tremor. "My name is Isabel Moreno, a senior anthropology student. I am the niece of Helena Vasquez, one of the people who disappeared that year." He opened the door. Isabel walked in without hesitation. She took out a crumpled notebook from her canvas bag with many notes and photos taped inside. "I'm writing a thesis on erased collective memories on how a community wrongly remembers or is forced to forget. I found your 1977 article, the original uncensored version. It had my aunt's name, although the official newspaper of that year didn't mention the separate group. I want to know the truth about what happened to my aunt." Elias looked at the girl. It was not a look of distrust, nor the passing curiosity of a student. It was the look of someone who had suffered a loss without the right to feel pain. He sighed. "If you are willing to go all the way, then you have come to the right place." In that small room, 4 people now knew about the ranch. 1 had been threatened, another had lost her daughter's letter, 1 had been followed and almost harmed, and 1 had just walked in, carrying the blood of an old victim. And all of them understood. This was no longer an investigation. It was the untying of the last knot of a curtain that had covered almost 2 decades. When everyone had left, Elias opened the locked tin box under the table, where he kept copies of old civil records, which he had secretly photocopied from his time as a journalist. In the section, Personnel Associated with the El Puente Scholarship, there was a name in italics on the last margin, almost erased by a red pen. Maria L. Zúñiga, temporary residence in 1991 in Callejón de Tiza, then changed identity to Maria L. Mendoza. Elias circled the name with a pencil and tapped the table 3 times. If she is still there, either she thinks no one will find her or she thinks no one will dare. Isabel put the documents back in the folder and said, "Perhaps both." Jose reviewed the residency records and checked the city map. The current address coincided with an old residential neighborhood on the eastern outskirts of Zacatecas, near an abandoned factory. Isabel sat in the back seat of the old pickup truck Elias had borrowed from a friend, tightly holding the worn, brown leather notebook. Before them was the low brick house with a zinc roof and a rusted iron gate. According to residency records, It was where a woman named Maria L. Mendoza lived, but they already knew it was a false name. The three got out of the car. Nora was silent, holding the document folder, her face marked by pain and tension. Elias approached the gate and knocked 3 times forcefully. A woman of about 60 with prematurely graying hair opened the door a crack. Her eyes scanned each of them, stopping at Isabel. The first second was surprise, but the next second it turned into absolute and glacial coldness. "You are Maria Zúñiga, aren't you?" Isabel asked directly. The woman did not answer, only said dryly, "I don't know who you are. I'm busy. Please leave." Elias took out of his pocket the copy of the food order from June 1977, the delivery form for the Rancho del Silencio, with the signature Zúñiga underneath. Then the photo of the burned concrete foundation, the concrete basement mark, and finally, the notebook with the list of missing student groups. He didn't speak much. He just placed each item on the iron table on the porch. "If you continue to remain silent, all of this will be on the police's desk next week." Zúñiga stood still, unblinking, looking directly at the notebook. For so long that it seemed time had stopped. But then she turned without saying anything. Without reaction, without taking the papers back, she just turned inside and said a cold phrase, "Do whatever you want," and closed the door. Elias did not expect her to confess, but her very silence confirmed everything. An innocent person would protest. Someone who knew something would just remain silent. That night, Isabel did not return to Elias's house as planned. She said she wanted to go to the local library to look for more old documents. On her way back, passing the last gas station on the street, she began to feel that something was wrong. The black car behind, with its lights off, maintained the same distance for 3 intersections. When Isabel turned sharply onto the small street behind the old church, the car still followed her. She stopped the car in front of a lit bakery, pretending to call a relative, and looked directly in the rearview mirror. The black car did not stop. It silently turned and disappeared. At the same time, at Elias's house, someone knocked on the door. A small newspaper package was left at the entrance. Elias opened it. A common cassette tape with a blank white label. There was no sender. He turned on the old cassette player, which still worked, inserted the tape, and sat down. The initial tape hiss lasted almost 10 seconds. Then, a deep, hoarse male voice, speaking slowly each word as if it had been carefully chosen. "If you want to end your life like those children, keep digging." Then, total silence. No other sound. Elias remained motionless. No trembling, no deep breaths. He just removed the tape, put it in an envelope, and wrote, "Evidence 0827, death threat recording." The next morning, the whole group gathered at Nora's house. The atmosphere no longer the same as before. Fernando was reviewing the map, Jose was checking the car tires and the new locks. Isabel held the pen, noting down temporal milestones, her fingers still slightly trembling after the chase. Elias was in the center of the room, his voice calm but paused. "They know we're getting close, but we've gone further than anyone in the last 17 years. If we stop now, they will win again. And forever." Isabel looked up, interrupting him for the first time. "It's not about winning or losing. It's about people, human lives. And it's an entire generation erased because they thought no one would care enough to dig it up. I can't write a thesis from silence. I need the truth. And I believe my aunt deserves to have the last word." Nora placed her hand on the table, and then from the bottom of a drawer, she pulled out something that had been well hidden. No one said anything more, but in the small room, their gazes met. One by one, without needing to speak, they understood that the game was no longer in the outskirts of the city. It had entered the territory of those who believed no one would dare to face them. And they would be the first. Inside Fernando Bravo's small room, everyone gathered around the dining table, which had now become an improvised strategy table. Maps were taped to the wall's student grouping documents marked with red pen photos of the old concrete foundation food invoices and every detail noted. Everything was organized like a true criminal archive. Jose sat in the corner of the table, holding an infrared camera borrowed from a friend who worked in the Forest Service. He connected the camera to Fernando's old TV, pressing the button to change the image. This is a photo from the night before last. After I remarked the ranch area, I installed the camera on a tree right at the spot where we found the crooked basement cover. The screen showed a black and white image blurred, but enough to see a figure. A large man wearing a hat, with a thick coat, holding a gasoline can. In the third image, a flame erupted exactly at the basement location. He went back to burn the same basement, trying to hide the evidence again. Isabel said, leaning forward. He knew someone had gotten there. Fernando narrowed his eyes at the image, pulling out a magnifying glass. It's Rodrigo Davila. I'm sure. I've seen him twice in my life. There's no mistaking him. Elias confirmed. Son of the former principal Miguel Davila. In 77, he was still a student. In 80, he suddenly disappeared. Now he lives under a false name in the U.S. He burned the ranch to erase the last traces. At the same time, Fernando went into the next room and picked up a pile of files well wrapped in oilskin paper. He opened them before everyone. This is a copy of the student transfer order that was internally seized by the police, but later requested to be concealed. I kept a copy. Look at the names below. The old document with yellowed paper signed by Miguel Davila and Maria Zuniga clearly indicated transfer of 5 Santa Oliva students to the El Puente Exchange Program, June 1977, reason special study opportunity in Latin America. The list of students was later blurred, but some names could still be clearly read: Helena Vasquez, Adela Santiago, Jimena Lopez. Elias clenched his hands. So they had a system. They took the students legally on paper, but actually transferred them into a human trafficking network. Isabel added, El Puente was the name of a scholarship foundation, but it was dissolved in 1982 due to lack of financial transparency. Everything was clear. Elias took a deep breath and then stood up. It's time to get out of the province's hands. We need to go further. Hand over this entire file to the federal police. Fernando nodded. I know the commander in charge of the federal missing persons case file, an old man, but never involved in scandals. No one spoke immediately. Nora remained standing at the edge of the table, her eyes fixed on the void. She had brought white flowers to the school gate for 17 years, believing her daughter would never return. However now, after all the evidence diagrams, transfer orders, fake scholarship applications, she knew one thing. There was no clear proof that Adela had died. Elias turned to say something, but she spoke first, slowly but firmly. If we still have a 1% chance, I will go all the way. I don't need them to confess. I just need to look them in the eyes and let them know I remember every day my girl disappeared. No one replied. Isabel gently placed her hand on Nora's arm. And Jose, who had almost been harmed, just looked at her for a long time, then nodded firmly. That afternoon, they left. A Ford pickup truck carried 3 people, Elias, Fernando, and Jose. and in the back, a metal box containing the documents. Isabel and Nora followed in another car, carefully so as not to be followed. They arrived at the federal police headquarters in the city of Zacatecas at 3:20 p.m. Fernando went in first, using his old badge to ask to see Commander Julio Sosa, who had been his training friend. After an hour, they were allowed to present the entire file. Every photo, every copy, every recording of the male voice threat, the photo of Rodrigo burning the ranch, and even the student transfer order with the official signature. Commander Sosa read everything. He said nothing for the first 10 minutes. But then he stood up and locked the meeting room door. If everything you have presented is true, then this is a state-scale human trafficking organization that has existed for almost 20 years, he continued. And if I agree to reopen the investigation, I too will no longer be safe. But I cannot ignore it. The children on this list may be alive, may be dead, or may still be held somewhere under a different name. Elias nodded. We didn't come here to ask for help. We came to say that we are ready to tell everything, to do everything. Before leaving the room, Commander Sosa stopped. I will need a few days to initiate the internal investigation process, requesting permission to excavate the basement of the ranch. But if there is more evidence, more witnesses, or someone in the system agrees to come forward, we will have an official opening of the case. Fernando said, I will look. I know at least 2 more people who worked in Santa Oliva's logistics. One now runs a pharmacy in Fresnillo. The other, I believe, is still alive, but has changed her name. That night, the whole group returned to Nora's house. No one ate much. No one turned on the lights. But in their eyes, though tired, though fearful, there was a light brighter than any lamp in the past 17 years. They had fought back. And this time, no one was alone. After handing over all the files and evidence to the federal police in the city of Zacatecas, Elias knew that an official investigation would take time. And silence was exactly what the other side needed. He told Isabel as they both left the federal headquarters, if we wait now, only one thing will happen. Everything will be covered up as in 1977. Isabel looked at him. Then we have to make people talk. Both those who are alive and those who remain silent. Over the next 3 days, the group split up, going to every local newsroom, contacting small radio stations, distributing flyers with the list of missing students, and publishing an open invitation. Meeting at the Santa Oliva school gate, to remember and to tell. The wind blew softly through the abandoned school grounds. The copper plaque, Santa Oliva, corroded and rust-stained, still hung askew from one side. In front of the iron gate, locked with chains, a long wooden table was set up with a battery-powered microphone and a recorder in the center. About 30 people gathered, some local reporters, some older residents, many former students, some just observing from a distance, others with old newspapers in their hands, their eyes red. In the crowd, a lady recognized Nora and waved in silence. Isabel stepped up to the podium, holding the microphone with both hands. No papers, no projection screen. Just the silence accumulated over 17 years now released by a genuine voice. She began with one sentence, "Today is not a memorial. It is a denunciation of crimes." Her voice was clear, unwavering. In her hand, she held a list. Her voice resonated through the mini loudspeaker, needing no other backdrop than the truth. The names of 18 students who were declared missing due to natural disaster by the school in 1977. But no one was found, no one was investigated. Today we will read them again, one by one. Adela Santiago, Helena Vasquez, Jimena Lopez. Thus she read each name, without omitting any. Then Isabel held up the group notebook. the first piece of evidence, the initial landmark of the journey. She pointed to the route map, the photo of the burned ranch foundation, the food invoice, the student transfer order with the principal's signature. We do not seek pity. We seek justice. The moment sporadic applause echoed from a few brave people who came forward from the crowd 40 kilometers away. In a house on the outskirts of Zacatecas, the federal police were at work. The urgent arrest warrant was signed that morning by Commander Julio Sosa, based on the files provided by Elias's group. Maria Zúñiga was arrested on site without resisting, but her eyes did not lower. Police found a safe in her home containing copies of the 1977 enrollment records, the list of boarding students, with names hand-marked in red ink. On the office desk, they also discovered an old leather album. Unlabeled, but inside were photos of Santa Oliva students, some never before released. Everything was sealed. Maria was taken to federal headquarters. In the car, she said only one sentence without making it clear to whom. "It's time. They won't leave us alone." That afternoon, Elias received news of the arrest. He nodded slightly, said nothing more, just turned to Isabel. "You did what I never thought would be possible in my life." Isabel simply replied, "I didn't do it alone. No one should do this alone again." The morning after the press conference, the federal police officially issued an international arrest warrant for Rodrigo Davila, identified in the infrared photo burning the ranch, and considered a key player in the student trafficking network abroad. Commander Julio Sosa, with the support of Fernando Bravo, following Maria Zúñiga's vague but authentic testimony, tracked Rodrigo to the northern border region in the city of Piedras Negras. He lived under a false identity. Luis Santoro, operating a small export business with legal documents and an identity altered by a Paraguayan passport. When arrested at his residence, Rodrigo did not exit peacefully, as recorded in the archives. When federal forces raided the small house where he was hiding on the northern border, Rodrigo barricaded himself in the back kitchen, forced open the side door, and ran down a narrow alley behind the garage. He had prepared an escape route, but so had the police. 2 officers were lying in ambush at the back of the property, encircling both ends of the alley. Rodrigo ran a few more steps, still holding what appeared to be a small weapon hidden in his coat, but before he could raise it, he was tackled to the gravel ground. He spat blood, handcuffed behind his back, with one shoe kicked to the side. When taken for interrogation, he sat upright in the interrogation room, maintaining his usual coldness. When questioned about the fate of the Santa Oliva students, he only said, "We didn't kill anyone. We redistributed them to a better place." The officer asked again, "Better means what? Who gave you permission to decide that?" Rodrigo smiled faintly. They were children no one remembered, orphans without relatives or who had just transferred schools. We simply gave them another chance to study in Europe, to grow up in families with means. Some were genuinely adopted, others. It's unknown. He paused and continued. Initially, it was a system, legal, in the name of exchange scholarships, long-term fostering. But it wasn't enough. Demand increased. Some people in the organization suggested cutting the paperwork, skipping the interviews, and just sending the good children, those who drew little attention, whom no one asked too many questions about. He lowered his head, looking into the investigator's eyes. "Do you think the children were sold?" "No. They were chosen. And once chosen, no one in that small town had a voice anymore." A phrase that slipped out as if he were talking about a batch of supplies, not 15 or 16-year-old teenagers who laughed loudly in dormitories. His testimony, combined with the file's location evidence photos of the fire at the post, was sufficient to charge him with international human trafficking crimes, concealment of bodies, and falsification of immigration documents. But that was only half the truth. On July 17th, the police received permission to fully excavate the area of the Rancho del Silencio, exactly at the spot Nora and Elias had indicated. After almost 5 hours of excavation, they found a small concrete basement, almost 2 meters deep, manually backfilled, not according to official construction plans. Inside, there were 2 female bodies, one on top of the other, with decomposing bones, but the bindings on their wrists still intact. Forensic analysis confirmed the DNA matched the families of Adela Santiago and a student named Helena Vasquez. The room seemed to fall silent after the technician's last sentence. Elias didn't look at anyone. He just gently placed the result on the table, his fingers still trembling. Nora stood motionless before the result. She tried to squint and reread, as if she could reverse the cold printed letters. But when the last line appeared, bone sample 99.9 FM% compatible with Adela Santiago's mother's sample, she let out a hoarse, broken cry, then collapsed onto the tiled floor. "No, she's not my daughter. It can't be. Adela, my daughter. Forgive me." Elias and Isabel rushed to help her up, but Nora pushed them away, beating her hands against her chest, tears streaming down too fast to wipe away sobs tearing at her throat. I let her go. I let her go. I should have stopped her. I should have known that checkpoint 3 wasn't a real place. She trembled as if she would disintegrate. For 17 years she had kept silent. Each bouquet of white daisies placed at the gate was a reminder. You are still somewhere. Mom won't give up. But now there was no more hope. There was no more room for waiting. Isabel stood behind, unable to hold back her tears. She never had the chance to embrace Helena, but seeing the woman in front of her cry over a DNA result, she felt clearly when memory is buried, pain doesn't disappear. It just waits for the right moment to erupt. Elias gripped Nora's shoulders, his eyes also red, but his voice firm. It's not your fault. It's the fault of those who did this. And they won't be able to hide anymore. The investigation expanded, revealing at least 10 students were taken abroad via Guatemala, Panama, Colombia, and then distributed to wealthy families with falsified adoption documents. 5 students disappeared, unidentified. The remaining 3 students were presumed dead at the ranch itself, 2 of whom were found recently, and the location of one is still undetermined. The shocking news spread throughout the country. State television could not ignore it. In a primetime news broadcast on July 20th, for the first time, the name Santa Oliva officially appeared on national television, accompanied by the phrase, "systematized crime." 3 days later, in a small house on the outskirts of Bogotá, Colombia, international police, in collaboration with a human rights organization, found a woman named Julia Rivas, who had been adopted in Panama in 1978. Her DNA matched the Cortés family, one of the students who disappeared in Santa Oliva. Initially, Julia remembered nothing but fragments of memory. A hill, the smell of burning wood, a woman's voice shouting, "Checkpoint 3." But when Isabel showed her a photo of the entire group of students in 1977, the photo of Adela Santiago in the left corner, Julia began to cry. She pointed to the photo, repeating a phrase several times in Spanish with a Mexican accent, "Éramos 5. Nadie fue arrastrado por el agua. Nos encerraron. There were 5 of us. No one was swept away by the water. They locked us up." Memory after 17 years, buried by medication, by deception, by silence, began to return. On July 3rd, 1995, exactly 18 years after the disappearance, In Tres Soles Park, where Santa Oliva once stood, a new memorial was erected, made of white stone with the full names of the 18 students engraved on the front. No alphabetical order, no numbering. Just a small line engraved below, Santa Oliva, not forgotten, not forgiven. Nora placed the bouquet of white daisies before the stone. But this time, she did not turn her back. She sat reading each name as if calling her daughter back. Beside her, Isabel remained silent, firmly holding a book with the cover printed, "Reconstructing Community Memory, a Study of Santa Oliva." Her thesis was completed and later became the first reference in the field of collective memory and social trauma in Latin America. 2 years after justice was established, Elias Ramirez passed away due to a lung illness. In his will, he did not ask for a funeral. He only wished to be buried under the apple trees he himself planted in Tres Soles Park, where the old schoolyard once was. On his tombstone, a single phrase engraved, "He didn't write articles. He rewrote memories." We tell this story based on real disappearances that occurred in various rural areas of Latin America. The names of the characters and places have been changed to protect the identity of those involved. What you have just read is not a detective novel, but truth rewritten with the utmost care and respect for the pain still lingering. If you have read this far, perhaps you too have wondered how many truths have been buried simply because no one dared to mention them. We do not tell it to shock. We tell it to remind you that memory can be hidden, but it never disappears. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to listen, for the truth to find its way back. If this story made you pause for a moment, please share it via WhatsApp with a friend, a family member, or simply someone you believe needs to be reminded that silence is not the end. Because sometimes the only right thing we can do is to not let anyone else be silenced.